Hello there and welcome to Group 7's final presentation on Laura Secord, Walk in the Woods. A-Frame was completely new to all of us, and so these past few weeks have seen an impressive amount of work from our team as we face the challenges of a new platform to bring you this experience. In order to recount what our project is about, I will be giving a brief introduction into the background. The project is about Laura Secord, a woman who walked 32 kilometers in the dead of night through a forest while a war was going on to deliver a message. The virtual experience is meant to cover that journey through an interactive map with various traps as well as a pursuer. Throughout the course of the project, we developed milestone plans in order to push ourselves to meet our goals in the timing required. We used different platforms to accomplish different project management aspects. Discord was used to communicate with one another. In terms of tasking one another, Trello was initially used before discovering GitHub had an easy taskbar in place. While not all scope objectives were achieved, the base game components were created and adjusted in order to generate the experience that our group had initially set out to do. Off to you, Emily.
Hello, I am Emily from the design team, and I will be talking about the designs we have created and implemented into the final game. When starting this project, we had a couple models that we wanted to finish for the base game specifically, and then we had a long list of items and models that we wanted to create if we had extra time. The extra models included bears, wolves, cliffs, caves, and an enemy base camp. For the base game, we originally wanted to make rivers and base characters. For the style of the game, we decided on low poly because the style is easier to complete in a less amount of time, and if done correctly, looks very good overall. We also wanted to make sure that our model designs had a cohesive style, so none of the models would look out of place when we added them all together. We completed and created the base models for both player 1 and 2, but instead of a river, we decided to create other kinds of models to enhance the environment, to fill up the map and make it full. In the end, we created 3 kinds of rocks, 2 kinds of trees, which included regular and pine, a fallen log, as well as blades of grass, and a mud pit. Jonathan also created a bear trap that could be placed on the ground and would become an obstacle for the player. Other than the bear trap, the mud pit also serves as an obstacle for the player to encounter. Jonathan also created some architecture for the game, which includes a cabin for when you play as Laura Secord and get to the end of the game. For the models, I started off with 2 base models. A male and a female, one for Laura Secord and one for the soldier enemy player. To both, I changed their standing pose and made sure that I curved their hands to make it look like they could hold a lantern, which I also created and added on later. I also added hair and clothing and details to both, as well as textured them, clothing, and the base characters. I created Laura Secord to have long brown hair and a dress, and made sure her hand can hold a lamp. And I also made an 1800s based British soldier holding a musket and have his hand in a position where he can hold a lantern.
Hey, I'm Jonathan. I'm on the design team for the game, and I'll be discussing some of the challenges that we encountered when designing for Laura Secord. A more serious problem we encountered at one point was when the assets were not loading in with their colors and texture information. At first we thought this was an error with the game's coding, and then we went and checked it out. But after trying to spend a lot of time in the code and getting nowhere, we eventually figured out that it was actually a problem with Maya, that Maya was not saving them properly. So we were really confused at one point. We didn't really know what was going on with Maya to make this happen because everything was rendering properly. Eventually we fixed this by downloading Blender and retexturing all the assets and exporting them back into their original places, which ultimately did the trick. Sometimes there are some challenges with designing for low poly as well. We chose to do things in a low poly art style for this game because we felt it would save time, and also we just genuinely like how it looks too. Making low poly assets means striking a balance with detail. So too much and things won't fit into the world, not enough detail, and it won't get the idea across. So designing low poly assets for this game with an atmosphere like ours means we needed to make the most out of every detail when we were designing. We did come across a few issues in modeling, such as, just the usual technical problems you'd expect, non-manifold geometry that shows up, less than ideal topology and UV mapping. Nothing anybody in this program is really a stranger to at this point. Usually these problems were fixed by simply merging vertices together.
Hey there, I'm Quinlan from the coding and design team. I helped create the game's environment as well as a portion of the code dictating the user interactions with the scenes. A large part of my work centered around the creation and altering of a simple ground plane. Thankfully, this was created in A-Frame due to A-Frame's built-in functions. In doing so, I was able to adjust the individual vertices once I was able to subdivide the plane. We adjusted the height of the vertices according to a black and white image designated as the height map. By storing the vertices of that plane, we were able to assign those positions to individual objects as we spawn them into the environment. Further code was put in place so that the player would interact with the height map as well, adjusting the height of the player to the height of the nearest vertice to the player along the X and Y plane. A simple decision tree structure has been put in place to dictate the controls of a non-player controlled character to assist in the immersion of the game when a user would like to play the game in the single player mode. The premise was that a creature would go from searching for the player to stalking the player to either trying to attack or scare the player, and then escaping from the player if the player tried to fight back. Unfortunately, due to my inexperience with A-Frame, there was issues with connecting the interactions between the creature and the player in a way that would smoothly allow for transitions between the decision states. The result of this is that the creature's movements appear far more random than they would otherwise. The creature's states are controlled by triggers, which themselves are controlled by functions informing the creature of the player's distance away or the time that they have been in their current state. Work had also begun on the inclusion of the trap designs into the game. Ultimately, they were included. Despite some of the setbacks and hardships, I truly believe that this project has been one of the best learning experiences of my university career thus far. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank my teammates and especially the design team for putting all of their hard work into this project. My name is Quinn Walker. Thank you for listening to my portion of the presentation.
In continuation of coding development issues, I will discuss a few other challenges we face as well as their solutions. Initially, there were issues with the generated objects at each of the vertex spots not loading in. By looking back at some previous assignments, I was able to resolve the issue and get our environment loaded up. This was a huge relief to see as we were able to finally appreciate the progress we had done so far. The biggest issue our team faced was networking, which required a lot of trial and error. Initially, the network A-frame example was coded through in order to understand the process. When it came to implementing the networking into our project, we had to go through a time-consuming procedure of finding what the issue was and attempting to single out a solution. Eventually, the networking solution was found, and we were able to see our two characters in the same server. Now let's take a look at the final demo. When you start at the home page, there's a set of instructions you should read before proceeding. There are two roles you can do, Lord Secord or the Soldier. Both characters will load into a dark environment with a lantern. The environment has cliff borders, assortment of trees, logs, rocks, bear traps, and a lone cabin. Laura Secord's character must find their way to the cabin in order to deliver their message. They must enter the cabin and click the sphere, which will end the game for the Laura Secord character. The soldier character must find Laura Secord's character and click on her in order to end the game. Thank you for attending our presentation. I am extremely proud of all that we accomplished this semester.